A lot to get to tonight, and you can bet that we're going to get deeper into the Alaska Airlines flight that's dominating local and national headlines. But first, let's talk about the foster care system in Oregon. Now, according to the state of Oregon, 4,611 children were in foster care in the state as of January 1st of 2024. Of those, 50% live with relatives. In a perfect world, every child would be treated with love and compassion. But unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a real world. And that's not always the case. It's led to cultural battles over rules focused on who can be a foster parent. It's something we've seen right here in Oregon, and now the federal government is getting involved at a nationwide level. And that's our big story tonight. Here's what's going on. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is proposing a new rule that would require anyone who wants to be a foster parent to support LGBTQ kids in their care. It's a rule that's already in place in Oregon, but it's come up against opposition here in the past year. We're going to remind you about the Oregon case that we've previously reported on, and then we're going to expand our vision to what's happening nationally. Now, you might remember the story of Jessica Bates. She's a mom of 5 in Malheur County. She wants to foster 2 siblings and eventually adopt them, but when she went to do her foster parent training, she found out she'd have to support LGBTQ kids. To support them under Oregon law means all kinds of things. Letting the kids be open about their attraction to people with other genders, letting them use the name and pronouns that best suit their gender identity, letting them dress to show how they want. It also means as a foster parent seeking medical care appropriate to their gender and sexual identity. Jessica Bates said that as a Christian, she could not do all of those things, that they go against her religious beliefs. Here's what she told the Oregon Department of Human Services. I cannot support this behavior in a child. I have no problem loving them and accepting them as they are, but I would not encourage them in this behavior. I believe God gives us our gender, sex, and it's not something that we get to choose. She went on to say that providing gender-affirming medical care like hormone therapy or puberty blockers would be child abuse. So, DHS denied her application, saying that if she refused to support LGBTQ kids, she didn't meet the requirements to be a foster parent in Oregon. Bates, the woman who wants to be the foster mom, then turned around and sued, saying that the state was violating her First Amendment rights and free speech and free religion. She asked a court to suspend the rule requiring her to support the LGBTQ kids, but late last year an Oregon judge ruled against her. Judge Adrienne Nelson wrote, "The court questions whether plaintiff's willingness to love and support a child is sufficient to ensure that the child will feel loved and supported." The judge went on to say that although Bates claims she would love an LGBTQ child in her care, she doesn't quite understand what support entails, writing, "Plaintiff takes too narrow a view of what it means to support a child's identity." While plaintiff is correct that disagreement does not equate disparagement, the court also recognizes that the term rejection takes many forms, and it includes the impact that invalidation can have on LGBTQ+ youth. Bates' lawsuit is ongoing now. Her attorney says they've appealed the judge's ruling. Now to the national view. Oregon is one of 35 states, along with Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, that have laws in place specifically protecting foster youth from discrimination based on their gender or sexual identity. Those are the states you see there in dark green on the map. They are from Movement Advancement Project. That's a nonprofit think tank dedicated to advancing equality and opportunity. 8 other states, the ones in lighter green, have laws protecting foster kids from discrimination on their sexual orientation only. And the rest, 7 other states, they're in the yellow. There are no similar protections there for foster kids. Now, the new rule proposed by the federal government of Health and Human Services wants to change that and make the rule similar to Oregon's a national requirement used by every state. It's part of a child welfare package aimed at supporting kids and families in the foster system that would require caregivers be trained to provide for a foster child's needs related to their sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, and would mandate that LGBTQ children are placed in a home that is free from hostility toward their identity. Studies show that LGBTQ kids and teens are overrepresented in the foster care system nationwide. That's according to Children's Rights. That's a social justice advocacy group for children. A 2019 study found that 30% of youth in foster care identify as LGBTQ and 5% as transgender. In the general population, roughly 11% of kids identify as LGBTQ and just over 1% transgender. A study by a nonprofit focused on suicide prevention for LGBTQ youth called the Trevor Project showed that being in foster care is especially difficult for marginalized youth. Those who identify as LGBTQ had nearly 4 times greater odds of being kicked out, abandoned, or running away due to treatment based on their identity compared to kids who were never in foster care. Those youths also had 3 times greater odds of reporting a suicide attempt in the past year compared to those who had not been in the system. Another group, Children's Rights, which focuses on the foster system, found that 44% of LGBTQ youth in state custody report they were removed, ran away, or were thrown out of their home for reasons directly related to their identity. Several members of Congress sent a letter to the Health and Human Services Secretary in favor of this proposed rule, including Oregon Senator Ron Wyden. They wrote, "The proposed rule to help ensure LGBTQ children in foster care feel safe and valued and receive appropriate services without discrimination or prejudice. These youth deserve placements that are safe, affirm who they are, and have been cleared by well-trained caseworkers who understand their unique needs." But some Republican lawmakers are pushing back now, basically using the same argument as Jessica Bates is making here in Oregon. Republican attorneys general from 19 states sent their own letter arguing that religious people who want to become foster parents will face discrimination if they refuse to support LGBTQ kids. They wrote, "Caring for children in need is a duty of the Christian faith, and the foster care system depends on individuals and organizations of faith." They went on to say that without faith-based organizations and foster homes, the foster care system would face a critical lack of placement options. They wrote, "The proposed rule will drive individuals and organizations of faith away, which will increase the strain on the system by reducing the number of available foster homes. The federal government should be searching for ways to increase the number of foster homes, not decrease them." They go on to say that many states across the country are facing an overwhelming number of kids in the foster care system and not enough homes to place them in. That is a problem that we've seen here in Oregon as well, with kids housed sometimes in hotels, offices, even former jails at times. Nationwide, more than 391,000 children were in foster care in 2021, according to a report from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So, that's a lot to digest, I know, but it's a big deal. What do you think about this proposed rule in Congress? Should foster parents around the country have to follow rules similar to Oregon's and have to support LGBTQ plus kids and their choices? Or do you side with Jessica Bates and others who believe it infringes on their religion? Let us know, will you? Send us an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090.